Okay, this is called Trig of Any Angle. So now we're going to expand to think of our trigonometry, to use trigonometry that's not necessarily on the unit circle. So we're going to still use those skills that we learned about finding the trig functions and how to find angles based on the x and y coordinate grid, and still remember the skills we learned about reference angles and such, but we're going to apply it a little bit differently. Another thing we want to recall is our little acronym that we used in order to be able to determine where the trig functions are positive. Remember, all students take calculus. All students take calculus. So that is to help us remember where the trig functions are positive. All of them are positive in the first. Sine and its partner are positive in second. Tan and its partner in the third. Cosine and its partner in the fourth. Now, what's interesting is the little acronym tells us where all of these trig functions are positive, but most of the time the information that they give us as we work through these problems is going to be they give us where it's negative. So that's just one of those things we have to kind of figure out and get past. All right. We have some step-by-step directions here that are going to help us be successful if we follow them, including myself. I have to remind myself of the last one all the time because I typically forget it. But let's start off by, okay, we did that. Let's start off by determining in which quadrant the angle is going to be located in. Now, the given information here is a little different. They're not giving me an angle. They're giving me a trig function. So it's up to me to remember what information that's going to give me. They're giving me the sine is equal to this fraction. They're also telling me that tangent of theta is less than 0. So tangent of theta is less than 0. How is that going to be helpful to me? We've seen this way of being given information before. If the tangent is less than 0, that's telling me what about the tangent? I heard it. It's negative. It's going to be negative. Good. Very good. So this is telling me the tangent's going to be negative. They gave me the sine already. And so I can see by looking at the value of sine that it is positive. So that's what's going to help me decide where this angle is going to be located, where theta is. It has to be in a quadrant where sine is positive and tangent is negative. And according to my little chart, where is that going to be? Sine is positive, tangent is negative. What quadrant is that? 2. Good. Yeah, that puts me in quadrant 2. So this information right here lets me know I'm in quadrant 2. Yeah, I can't really help you right now, but what?
Is the other teacher here?
Yes, yeah. Okay, so what was I doing? See, I get distracted so easily and I'm lost. Quadrant 2. Yay. All right. So I can check this off my steps. I did that. Now it wants me to mark the reference angle. And it kind of goes, these two kind of go together in the sense that we're going to be sketching a right triangle. So I'm going to go over here to quadrant 2. And I'm going to draw my right triangle, and I'm going to label theta my reference angle. So here I'm dropping the perpendicular. Theta has to be inside here. Theta's touching the x-axis. So I'm able to draw all of that after I determine that I'm in quadrant 2. So it also tells me in that step to label the sides appropriately. So if I know where theta is, I know my opposite side and my adjacent side and my hypotenuse. Okay. Now, not only am I going to label opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, but I'm going to label with the values of the sides. And I'm going to figure that out now. They gave me information about sine, and I need to recall SOHCAHTOA. Let's see, where can I put that in my notes? Got to remember SOHCAHTOA. According to SOHCAHTOA, sine is the opposite over hypotenuse. So what they've given me here, 7 over 25, means that 7 belongs to the opposite side and 25 belongs to the hypotenuse side. So let's take that information over to my diagram and label 7 and 25. That doesn't look so great. Okay. So I need to know the adjacent side. And how am I going to do that? I already know how I can do that with a right triangle. Find a missing leg. What do I do? Pythagorean theorem. Good. I know 25, so I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to put in 25 squared minus 7 squared. And then I'm going to take the square root of that number that I get. And it's going to tell me that my adjacent side is how long? 24. Okay, are we all right with that? 24. Okay, now here is where I'm going to kind of interrupt our flow. So far, so good. It's been little bits of information and they've all made sense. Right now, I have to get you to recognize that adjacent length, the length is 24, no matter which way you look at it. However, it's located in quadrant 2. Therefore, as I'm drawing this diagram, the 24 is moving in a negative direction because of the fact that it's in quadrant 2, right? We already determined we're in that quadrant. Because it's going to the left, it's moving in a negative direction. So that means my 24 here is going to be negative. Now, this is a part of this process that we're learning that is easily forgotten, but it's written in our steps. It's the last step there. So we kind of just have to force ourselves to remember that what I'm doing right now might mean that I'm going to have a negative measure somewhere. So that adjacent side is negative 24. Alrighty, now we've got enough information to find what they're asking us to find. And so let's take a look. So all of this up till now is the prep work to get me so that I can answer the question. What I'm asked to find is the cosine and the cosecant of theta. So now that I've got all that stuff filled in, I can find the cosine because I know cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that is going to give me adjacent side is negative 24. And the hypotenuse side is 25. Yes? Cosecant. In order to get cosecant, I have to know its partner. So who is cosecant married to? Cosecant's married to sine. Good. Well, yay. They already gave me sine, right? They already gave me sine, and cosecant's married to sine, so I'm just going to flip sine upside down, and that means cosecant is 25/7. All righty. That's a lot of work to get to that final answer, but if we follow these steps that are up here, then I should be able to pull from all the things I've done so far. So everything that I've done over the last month or so is kind of pulling together to get me where I need to go for these. All right, so I'm going to try to get you started, and I want you to try to do the next one on your own. See how far you can get with the information that's given, all by yourself, or work with somebody next to you. Go back up to the top and let's follow the steps. The first thing says decide what quadrant you're going to be in. Decide what quadrant you're going to be in. So that means you need to decipher the pieces of information that they've given us. So look at the information they're giving us and decide what quadrant you're going to be in. Tangent's negative, cosine is positive, so I'm going to be in what quadrant? Where is cosine positive and tangent negative? Cosine's positive in 4 and tangent's negative in 4. So now that I know I'm in quadrant 4, do all the things that are in our steps. Draw the triangle, label theta, and label the sides. Okay. Once I get adjacent and opposite and all that labeled, then I need to fill it in with the numbers that they're giving me. So looking at what they've given, I need to remember that tangent is opposite over adjacent. Now, since this is negative, it doesn't automatically mean that the numerator is going to be the negative side. That negative can apply wherever it makes the most sense. Since we're in quadrant 4, I'm moving to the right, so that's positive. It's when I go down, that value is the one that's going to be negative. So the opposite side in this case would be the negative value. So this one's kind of nice because it gives me that negative number to assign to the opposite side. In the previous problem, we kind of just had to know that, because the trig function they gave us was positive. It was harder for us to recognize. But hopefully with practice, we'll get better at recognizing where it needs to be negative. The reason it's negative is because of the fact that on the x, y coordinate grid, and I'm going down in a negative direction. So the 5 is negative for that reason. And be careful with this one. This is not going to be a 3, 4, 5 triangle. The 5 is not on the hypotenuse, so it's not going to be a 3, 4, 5. I do need to use Pythagorean theorem here. And you're going to get a radical that we're going to leave it as a radical. It's very ugly. I mean, I want to say, let's see, 4 squared, 5 squared. So I end up with 41, I believe. The square root of 41. So instead of, but when you square it, it becomes positive. So this is, yeah. So I didn't write it there, but yeah. Okay, so the hypotenuse is the square root of 41. Let's go to what I'm supposed to find over here and go from there. Because with a square root of 41, I might have to do some work, but we'll just wait and see. Sine it wants. So sine of theta is the opposite over the hypotenuse, which according to my diagram, opposite is negative 5. Hypotenuse is square root of 41. And I can't leave it that way because of the fact that I can't have a radical in the denominator. So I am going to have to rationalize this. But it's not too terrible because rationalizing just means I'm going to get the number that's underneath that radical in the end. So the sine of theta is negative 5 on the square root of 41 over 41. And then they want us to find secant. So I have to know who is secant married to. Secant is married to cosine. Good. So first I've got to get cosine. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Now in this case, I would not go to the trouble of rationalizing that because I'm going to flip it over anyway to get the secant, right? The secant is the reciprocal of that. So my square root of 41 becomes my numerator once I flip it, and then I don't have to do anything else to it. So if you're finding one of the reciprocal pairs, you might not have to do the rationalizing. Okay, now from here, there's going to be the information that they give us might come in different formats. So next class, we're going to look at doing the same thing, but with the information that's coming in is going to come in different ways. So I might have to do a few things different. But ultimately, the process here, the steps that are listed at the top of this page, that's what we're going to need to follow. So as far as instruction goes, that should be good enough to get us to a good place. And I would like for you to practice that by going over to page, what is it? Page 25. On page 25, I would like for you to complete 3 and 4, and then 5A and B. That'll be your assignment for today, and that will then put us in a good place for next class where we'll do more of the same, but just having been given different information. So let's do this now before you leave today. I will get the screen updated. Give you time to kind of try to do some by yourself.